I think that Christ always comes first. Bitcoin is not going to solve your sin problems. Bitcoin can help be a solution for money problems here in this world for a short time, but ultimately Christ is the foundation, and I think that's something that's significantly different here.
Yo, welcome back to another episode of the Nyc Griff Show. This is episode number 309, I believe. And just so everybody that is listening understands, disclaimer, we don't take any advertisers, mostly because we don't have a lot of people listening, but secondly, because this is a podcast you come to when you want to buy Bitcoin and you want to learn why we're hodling. Because on episode 1, was December 31st, 2021 was when we started a bear market. Price started dropping 60, 40, 30, back up to 40, back down to 15. And my guy Nick here got in really what looks like right at the right time. Nick, how are you doing today? How's hodling treating you?
Man, great intro. I'm having a great Saturday. Got up early this morning, just got up about 6 o'clock, and still dark out. Had some coffee, yeah, it's been a good morning. Been doing some reading, been doing a little thinking. Excited to jump on with you today, bud.
Yeah, so we wanted to mix this thing up a little bit. We wanted it to kind of get, I guess, if you will, one perspective. We always kind of felt like we were shouting ideas from both ends, and this way one of us gets to learn from the other one on how they're doing things, seeing things, living things, and the other one kind of gets a platform to go off maybe a little bit. Nick, what's bugging you right now about the Bitcoin community? When you log into Twitter, is there anything that's eating at you a little bit?
That's a really good question. Great question to kick it off. It seems like there's so many different things happening right now. Seems like there is a lot of different things happening, and there's all different kinds of folks that fit into the conversation in different perspectives, different ways about different topics. Something that I have been feeling recently is, kind of the prideful, slippery slope of Bitcoin. I think very easily, whenever you dive down the rabbit hole and you start learning about what Bitcoin is, from a fundamental operations perspective, and then with that understanding how that really metastasizes itself into the rest of the world. Whenever you understand those things and then you start exploring it further and further, I think it's really easy to run into a slippery slope of pride where we think that we've got it all right and we know exactly what's going on. And it's continued to be reaffirmed that way as well, which makes it even more difficult, right? And so for me, I'm thinking, from a place of I want to be as humble as I possibly can. We don't want to be prideful, right? We need to humble ourselves, and so I'm thinking, it's real easy to start thinking that, oh man, we got it all right, and Bitcoin is the thing. And although we can believe that and think that that's true, that doesn't mean that we should treat other people any other type of way, or also that we should idol and worship our Bitcoin. We should not be doing that.
That's been
something that I've been thinking about.
Does pride rise with price?
Yeah, you could say that.
I think it's really interesting because when Nick got into Bitcoin, it really was just crashing. I mean, like every time we do an episode, we were like, all right, fundamentals. And obviously, it's hard to ignore the dollar price of anything. I mean, it's the world reserve currency. It's kind of what we're all measuring our purchasing power in. So obviously, it doesn't feel good when you get into an asset class and you start telling people about it, that it's going down. But
hey, Griff, let's think about something. You just said purchasing power, and this is a word that I kind of been thinking about recently, or I guess a specific term or topic that I've been thinking about, or detail, I guess. Economic value, purchasing power, money, currency. A lot of these terms people will use interchangeably, but they mean different things, right? So, you just said purchasing power. Whenever you say purchasing power, you're referring to the amount of goods and services that you can buy with a given currency unit or money unit, right? Whatever that monetary good is that you're using to exchange your time and focused skill, producing value in the market, whatever you're exchanging that for, that's the monetary good that you're using to purchase the goods and services that you need to maintain a certain standard of living. And so the purchasing power is literally just representing the amount of goods and services you can buy with a given amount of that monetary good.
Well, I agree. And I think traditionally speaking, people generations have used, quote unquote, less risky investments to store their purchasing power in. Now, how do you look at Bitcoin as a savings or investing model and what that does for your purchasing power?
It's interesting because there is a fundamental reality within the independent monetary network that is Bitcoin with a big B. But also on the outside, from the perspective of the speculators, there is a number go up investment aspect of it. And so what's interesting is if I'm pricing the value of all of my economic worth, and I'm pricing that in Bitcoin, I'm using Bitcoin as my unit of account. If I'm looking at it through that perspective, whenever I'm pricing things in Bitcoin, it's a really incredible savings technology, right? There's nothing that we've ever had that's like it. But also at the same time, we do live in this fiat world, right? I think for most folks, they're not going to very easily be able to buy all of the things that they need to maintain their life with Bitcoin. They're not going to either be able to do it, or they won't put in the work to do it. I don't do it, right? And there's also this existing legacy financial system that we're kind of, like we're in bed with, it sucks, but that is reality, right? Like we do live in a fiat world. And so because of that, you also see this number go up and down, and you see this volatility of Bitcoin, which is only a symptom of the size of it, which, is kind of an additional conversation about the growth and trajectory of the adoption of Bitcoin. But so I think in the short to midterm, there's still kind of this volatility aspect of it. I'm still not putting the economic value or the purchasing power in Bitcoin that I know that I need to have short term, because there is still volatility up and down, and that's okay. And we can talk about the maturing market, like I said. So I don't know. I think, but I do say you asked about purchasing power on how I do that, how I see that with Bitcoin. I store all of my long-term economic value in Bitcoin. And I got to just add one piece about what it means to save. Saving, the verb to save, saving, is storing economic value somewhere where there's little to no risk for loss. And in doing that, you're maintaining purchasing power. Now, generally, if there's zero risk, you're probably not going to gain much purchasing power. Bitcoin's a little different, but that's just one piece there on saving. So yes. I store Bitcoin.
You said long-term value. You said a lot of things for everybody listening. Nick, when did you buy your house?
That was August of 22, I believe.
So it was kind of after you got into Bitcoin, but it was a long-term goal of yours and Janae's to go and get a house. Do you have a different perspective on that now? Are you happy with your purchase? Do you view real estate the same way you did when you were, I guess, really just first getting into Bitcoin?
Man. Griff, you've got it primed up today. Okay,
that was my job. That was my job, Nick. That was my job, baby. I came ready with the questions for my boy.
So when we bought our house, we were living at my mom's. And we had been living there for probably maybe a year and a half, 2 years. And this is, like right out of college, just moved back in COVID.
Sidebar, Tammy's great. Tammy's great. So if you are going to live with the parent, if you're going to live with a parent and you're young, That was probably the best situation possible, but yeah, continue.
It was great. And so we start saving, and when we bought, we made sure that we did a really good job of budgeting our purchase, of how much we wanted to spend on a total amount, how much our monthly costs were going to be, what our interest rate was, and how much free cash flow we had. So we were very intentional with all that. And what's beautiful is, like, here in this part of the country, I'm in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, and it's cheaper for me to buy and live in this place that I'm in now, as opposed to renting an apartment or something like that would be kind of a similar size, or maybe something smaller and a little nicer.
What do you feel about long-term value, or the risk versus owning a home for 30 years on a mortgage and all the things that come along with it, or the risk of owning Bitcoin? Which is a higher risk, do you believe? Yeah,
that's interesting.
Because side note,
your first question, I do view real estate differently today than I did whenever we bought this house. Definitely do. I'm still happy with our purchase, although I don't see it as much of an investment as maybe I did at one point, or a lot of other folks see it as. And so I would say, risk between Bitcoin and real estate. One, it's interesting. You think about ongoing cost, maintenance cost. What happens if your roof's bad and you got to replace the roof, or the HVAC system, or you've got plumbing issues or electrical issues, or any one of a billion things happens. You've got an additional cost there to own this physical real estate, right? Now, a lot of that is based upon, how new is your home, how well was it constructed. All these kinds of things are obviously factors. But in Bitcoin, that cost is zero, right? I bought Bitcoin yesterday. We bought some Bitcoin actually Thursday. Just great timing. You gotta love buying Bitcoin at like 69, 70, and then it drops to 66 like the next day. And you're like, oh man, I should have just freaking bought one day late. But whenever I buy that and I self-custody that Bitcoin, there is no ongoing maintenance cost. There is zero cost to continue to own Bitcoin. And you also have, also another factor is, depending on where you're at in the world and the country, property tax. That's a variable cost. That's, it's more anticipated than not. But just ongoing maintenance costs for real estate is significantly different. And also, this can burn down. Something bad can happen in this part of the country, and everything reduces in value here. Bitcoin is a globally decentralized and distributed ledger that is not connected to any one individual or economy or country or border or anything, right? And so you think, well, what's the risk there? Fucking meteor could hit the earth. We could lose all of our electricity and internet. It's like the best argument against Bitcoin in a risk sense is like the world ends. But I would say generally, though, the risk for Bitcoin is less than real estate.
Yes.
Than what I've got here, anyways. In terms of just total overall cost, risk for additional costs, let's say that, because I don't believe either one is just going to ever just go away, right? I don't think it's ever going to go to just zero. And so then the question becomes, well, which one is going to be more? Which one is going to have which one is going to end up costing more and therefore making my capital input more? And I think that's physical real estate.
Well, it's also like, how do you really value what will make you happy? And real estate has a component that Bitcoin doesn't, that living in it, owning it, getting to cut your grass, getting to fix that lawn of yours in the back.
Getting to have your friends come over and burn some wood in the back. And
there's different value to different things. Yeah. Which one will go up against the dollar faster? I tend to go with the more scarce asset with pretty good value proposition. and all the problems it solves. But recently, Dave Portnoy, he went on and he was like, I have no respect. I have no respect for people who bought Bitcoin 10 years ago and are just like gajillionaires now. And I guess I ask you, are people who bought Bitcoin 10 years ago lucky? Do you feel lucky owning this asset and dealing with all of the, because you said there's no maintenance cost, right? There's no extras. There's no HOA. There's no income tax on just owning the Bitcoin. I mean, if you sell it, do what you will, but there is no maintenance. And when it comes to everything else in life, I guess there's maintenance. But what is the real maintenance with Bitcoin? Are you really lucky? Do you feel lucky? Or do you feel like it's a little bit harder than people like to give credit for?
I would say that there's got to be some certain amount of, coincidence and timing and kind of all that stuff that that kind of creates who you are, what you think about, and then ultimately, kind of being led to finding something like Bitcoin. So there's some chance, I think, involved, some luck involved, right? Like I found Bitcoin because you found Bitcoin, because JC found Bitcoin, because somebody else, and it's like, had I not been in that chain, it might have taken a lot longer for me to find it. So in some sense, right? But once you find it, all the luck's gone, because now it's all about the work that you've done to actually understand what it is. And when you do that, and you decide that you're gonna focus on Bitcoin and you're gonna hodl as long as you can, as hard as you can, man, I mean, that's tough. I know, having gone through a good bear market myself now one time, man, it's like what there's times where you can think like, man, like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing?
Well, also speak on some of because if you really get into Bitcoin, you kind of start wearing it on your shoulder or on your chest in Nyc's case today, and when you wear Bitcoin on your chest, people take it almost as if you're on some sort of team, as if there's something that Nyc can do to the Bitcoin protocol, like you work for the Bitcoin company or something of that nature. Has some of that, I mean, obviously, I don't think it's played a role in your conviction. I think maybe it's strengthened your conviction. But is that also a part of the maintenance in some respects, is when some people close to you know that you're buying Bitcoin, they seem to have some very, very fiat-ish opinions?
Yeah, I think that's definitely real. I mean, you and I are obviously people that are very outspoken about our Bitcoin ideas. And I think it's pretty funny because there's tons of jokes where people will say, can you own Bitcoin and not talk about it? That kind of stuff. But there's obviously folks that don't that don't put all their thoughts out there, right? Don't tell everybody. And, but yeah, definitely part of the maintenance of your conviction of Bitcoin is coming in contact with the common fiat maxi.
Yeah, no.
Turns into Agent Smith the moment that you start talking anything that's anti-fiat money, anti-dollar.
You definitely start feeling like you might have like a CIA guy or something just like hanging around you a little bit when you start buying it. Like you might, like everybody kind of turns into the CIA or the FBI a little bit. They're just like, hey, you need to stop buying all that Bitcoin stuff. I'm like, why is everybody telling me not to buy this? And I guess for you, Nyc, like getting into Bitcoin, was that who you were growing up? Like you would always try to be, I guess, the odd one out, if you will? Or do you search for things that are the odd one out? Or does Bitcoin feel obvious to you?
No, I wouldn't say that I was like always looking for the odd thing or trying to be different necessarily. I guess I just thought how I thought, and kind of led me to where I am. So I don't know.
I sometimes think that when we were doing the podcast the whole way through, it really helped us. Obviously, now it looks maybe a little bit more intelligent than when it did originally. But we were doing this podcast. I mean, it's amazing to have 309 episodes, and we've never really cared about who was listening or what was listening, and it's gone up and down. But at least in my opinion, and I'd love to hear what you think, when we started doing this, I had been in it for a little bit. I had seen it go from 8 to 69. I'd started to make more money, of course, as soon as it goes to 69. And I'm like, well, crap, like I'm never going to be able to buy a full Bitcoin. And then you get an FTX crash, Terra Luna, all these things, right? All these things, it just starts going down. And these things, when we were talking about it on the podcast, when you're doing basically Bitcoin fundamental podcasts for the first 50 episodes, And then on the side, you're also going, well, this is adjacent to the fundamentals of Bitcoin. Like exchanges crashing don't mean anything to Bitcoin. So at least for me, doing it and also seeing your maturation really helped strengthen my conviction to basically when this thing went to 15, I was like, I'm going to sell my arm. I'm going to sell it. Sell it, and somebody will buy it, and then I'll buy Bitcoin with it, because it truly has been, obviously now, talk about protecting your purchasing power. I mean, we're both in different seats than we were, and we're not, guys, we didn't, if you bought $1 Bitcoin in 2009, $1, it would be worth $91 million. Okay, that's not us. But if you also would have adopted a MicroStrategy Bitcoin standard or a Bitcoin strategy in August of 2020, you would be up 463% in 3 or 4 years. And for me, it was always talking about Bitcoin with you that definitely got me through it. And I think that's with all great ideas, is it not? I mean, you got to talk about it. You got to steel man the arguments. You got to sit in the car. You got to listen to both takes. You got to catch the other person if they're going to fall off the ledge. Although, Nick, I don't know if we ever really fell off the ledge. I think it was kind of the perfect concoction. But what do you think really? Because, I mean, man, you bought this thing and it just goes down and down and down and down. Griff, what are we doing here? What's going on? What sold it for you, I guess? Like, was there a book? Was there an episode we did? Was there a person we met on this podcast? Was it something to do with the legacy financial system and how it feels like that? It's like there's a lot of citizens with their fingers in a wall, just plugging water as it's about to come through. What was there something specific, or was it just general that you just kept on accumulating, kept on going?
Definitely, it's the study and better understanding of the fundamental operation of Bitcoin. Whenever you actually understand and start to study and learn about how Bitcoin is an independent system, it doesn't need FTX. It doesn't need the United States government. It doesn't need Jerome Powell and the Fed. Whenever you start thinking about all these entities that are controlling money today, Bitcoin is completely independent of that. And what's interesting is that, people get freaked out by the price, and whenever it goes down, specifically like when people like myself buy near the previous all-time high, and then it just tanks for the entire next 2 years or whatever it was. Man, that can really shake you if you're not really in the know. And I wish I could point to something specific. Obviously, the Bitcoin standard is so good, but it's so much more than that. I mean, there's so many different good podcasts, so many different articles, so many different live events that come out. You watch all the inflation prints, and you hear all of the commentary that's happening around those things, interest rates and commentary. I mean, you see all of these different things, and in aggregate, you really start to form this world perspective and world view with a greater and greater emphasis on looking at it through the lens of Bitcoin. And so you start developing this idea of what is reality. And I'm finding stronger and stronger conviction, and this is why we buy and hold Bitcoin, in that nothing else that's happening outside in the world, politically, culturally, socially, all of these issues we hear about, none of that really impacts Bitcoin at all. At all. Zero. And it's just kind of an aggregate of all of the things you can read and listen to and watch, and like we were talking about earlier, we were talking about, do you feel lucky that you found Bitcoin and that you just held it and you just bought some Bitcoin? It's like, I feel lucky that I found it, but I can't say that I'm lucky, but I've proven my work by putting in the time to read the books, to read the articles, to listen to the podcast, to watch the YouTube videos, to watch the how-tos, to watch the, so-and-so for beginner, this for idiots, getting in and seeing some of those demonstrations of how things work and understanding how Bitcoin operates standalone from everything else. Man, then you just start to think, how am I ever going to buy as much of this as I'd like? How is this ever I'm never going to get enough to secure what I want for myself and my family, you know? And then you go back to the idea of, are we saving for the short term, the midterm, the long term? What is the time horizon we're looking at? Because it's also, we start thinking about pride, that number go up as it has here recently. We start thinking about, ooh, money, ooh, more purchasing power. I can do more and more and more. I think that's a very slippery slope, and I'd be lying if I say I didn't fall into it sometimes too. But I think if we're being really, really intentional, we're thinking about what is the impact of this, not just for ourselves, but our kids and our grandkids and our great grandkids. I mean, that's the kind of technology that Bitcoin is. And so, although I think a lot of people get in for the speculative nature of, oh, I can turn my $1,000 into more, or whatever the example may be, I think the folks that stay are the ones that have dove down the rabbit hole to understand what Bitcoin is independently. Bitcoin with a big B, the network. What is it?
Now, the whole Bitcoin thing, I think people also forget we live in a pretty sick society. Society is sick. World economics is pretty sick. I mean, whether you want to point to war or poverty or slavery or just like how the means to which we go to get what we want here in the States. And, you know, nowadays, like there's a lot of people who are looking at Bitcoin's price, still shitting on it, still hating on it. And when you get into a Twitter argument with them and you go, well, hey, have you like just considered like just get the number go up out of your mind, because as a Bitcoin account or two Bitcoiners, we're not always really thinking about that. Have you considered that Bitcoin might solve this problem? And for you, is there a problem that Bitcoin solves that you think people just simply do not understand right now?
Yeah, that's obviously inflation. The obvious answer is inflation. You know what? And the reason that people don't understand this. First, let's talk about what inflation is, and then what it causes, and how what it causes inherently obfuscates what actually caused it, which is strange. So inflation, all inflation is the expansion of monetary supply. That's all that it is. People say that inflation is price increases, and that's not true. Price increases can happen from supply and demand aspects within a market individually. That has nothing to do with the supply of money. But when true inflation happens, it's because the supply of money increases in each individual unit, i.e. each individual dollar in our example, or each individual Bitcoin. If the supply were to increase, the total supply were to increase, each individual unit becomes less and therefore has less purchasing power. As we discussed earlier, what goods and services can I buy? But typically it takes a little while for that to settle into the market, right? So while folks are still out expending their time and focusing their skills at producing value in the market, and they're earning maybe the same income, that's buying them less and less goods and services with which to maintain a standard of living. And whenever you do that, things start to get tight. And when things start to get tight, people start to do weird things. And we start to run into, now you do that for one generation, and you know, some things might be kind of strange. You do that for multiple generations, things get really strange. We're now at over 50 years of fiat money, fiat standard here in the United States. And we know that the monetary supply has been manipulated well before that. So, but let's say around 50 years, man, that creates a societal impact on how we view our money, how we view our time associated with earning that money, how we view the product of the work that we're putting in. It changes our perception of economic reality, is what it does. And I think the problem that Bitcoin solves, or at least is the best attempt at solving that problem that we've had up to this point, is solving the inflation problem so that people can better understand and actually perceive the economic reality of their money and what its worth is relative to goods and services that they want over here, and how much my value is in terms of time and focused expertise and skill that I expend in the market to produce value. Here's a simple example. If I go out and I just start shoveling holes in the middle of nowhere, who's going to pay me to do that, right? Nobody's going to pay me to do that. And therefore, that time that I'm expending and that labor that I'm expending in that and doing that is not worth anything. Now, if I'm Jeff Bezos and I create an Amazon, that's worth a fuckload to the world, right? That's worth, think about all the innovation that Amazon has brought. That time spent and that labor and that expertise in focused skill, that's worth a lot of economic value. And we know that because of the pricing mechanism, the pricing lens that we view everything through, that we view economic reality through. And so I think Bitcoin solves that pricing mechanism problem, solves the inflation problem, allows us to better value ourselves relative to the world. And I think that creates more certainty into the future, also because we can save and store our economic value in a thing, right? We can do that now. And when we do that, we create better certainty into the future for ourselves, and we make more long-term based decisions as opposed to I'm living paycheck to paycheck just trying to make ends meet. And I think that has a huge societal impact, again, over generations, just as inflation does on the negative side over generations.
Do you think that kids are just lazy now then? Are kids just lazy? Are kids just lazy and they're just not working? And is there a component? Because I've been getting into...
It's all a sliding scale. It's definitely not a definitive, because there are absolutely are kids that are like that. But there's obviously people that aren't, so it's a sliding scale.
Is it not? The game is a little bit skewed at this point. It's not like the American dream is dead, but the American dream is what to you?
I think it's a lot harder to attain from a monetary perspective. Now, also too, see, another thing that I think has been interesting about Bitcoin recently is it's almost like folks are looking at Bitcoin from a perspective of that's kind of the one and the only. And I think that's maybe correct in certain context. But in terms of this is how we have to achieve, freedom and happiness. I think that's an incorrect perception. I think it's part of it. I think it's a part of the equation. Money is obviously a part of the equation of living a happy, fulfilled life in this world as we understand it. It's part of it, but I think that there are some other factors that are significantly more important.
Well, and for you, that is spiritual. No, there's money, and then there is religion, and there is our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and things of this nature. Do you think that there is a symbiotic relationship between sound money and religion? Do you think that a better money gets people back into spirituality? Because I would agree, just from a standpoint, and I think anybody can agree with this, it doesn't matter who you are, the spiritual consciousness of American society is, and it's a tough thing to measure, is at an all-time low. I don't think we've ever had this many young people moving and living and doing what they do with no guide, with no belief, with nobody to counterbalance their ego and their pride and things of that nature. And I guess more of my question to you, Nick, is do you think that a sound money helps get people back into that bucket? Is Bitcoin a way to more of a utopian, or is it more leading us to a dystopian society, or is it dystopian to utopian? What do you think?
So I think regardless of situation, with faith in Christ, you can have a certainty and a foundation that is immovable. That I think provides it's like orders of magnitude larger certainty than somebody without that faith. And I think that no matter what the situation is, whether we've got fiat money or we've got a Bitcoin standard, I think that there's a level of certainty that you have there that's doesn't really, obviously what we do, the choices we make in this world matter. But also at the end of the day, I've got a ticket to heaven through faith in Christ. And a true change of heart in that, true belief and true change of heart in that also impacts the actions that we take, ultimately the deeds and the works that we do. It's not necessarily by our works, but our faith is confirmed in our works, I think. And we can talk about where in the Bible that is kind of rooted. But I think whenever folks are living in a broken money standard, I think it's really easy to fall into a mindset of fear and a mindset of lack, right? Which is not coming from a spirit of Christ. This is not coming from the Holy Spirit. This is from the opposition. And when we are not fighting fear with faith, we're going to run into problems, and we're going to start leaning into some of these fears. And then if we don't have faith that we're fighting that fear with, what is it that we're going to start leaning on? I think that creates issues. And I think when folks get into the Word and they start to build a relationship with Christ, that changes how we perceive reality. And when we start thinking from a perspective of serving others, I think part of it is obviously in the mundane act of opening somebody's door for them, or picking something up if somebody dropped it and they didn't see that they had dropped something, or something, just little things like that. But I think there's also a much larger societal and world effort that we can make to help and improve things. And I don't see any problem with that. There's nothing in the Word, in my opinion, that says that, or that I am aware of, that dissuades people from improving and innovating. I don't think there's anything in there that says that at all. Now, it does, however, say that the world is ultimately dying. This doesn't last forever. And also that the world is opposite in nature of who God is. And so if we start loving in the world and being of the world and acting as the world does, that's ultimately going against God, going against Christ. But I think what Bitcoin represents in terms of sound money that enables people to store their value that they've expended, I think it's a fair and just system. If I give you money, I can't give that same money to somebody else simultaneously and ultimately fraud you guys out of value, right? Whether that was in exchange for goods or services or whatever. That's an unjust system when I can do that. And Bitcoin, up to this point, is the best solution that we have to that double spend problem. And I think that creates a more just society. Again, allows us to better make sense of our economic reality around us, allows us to make better long-term decisions. And the longer term we start thinking, hopefully the Word starts coming into it and we start building a relationship with Christ. But I think that Christ always comes first. Bitcoin is not going to solve your sin problems. Bitcoin can help be a solution for money problems here in this world for a short time. But ultimately, Christ is the foundation. And I think that's something that's significantly different here.
Just for most of our listeners, Nick had the Bible right there. He just popped it up. I mean, he was ready to go with that one. I thought that was awesome because most people are probably not watching and they're listening. And this brother right in the middle of it, he's like, right here, Jesus Christ. And he's like, boom, Bible, and it's halfway open. He's cracked it.
Well, let me just give you a quick little piece here from Hebrews. I've been studying the book of Hebrews recently, and in chapter 12, he's talking about kind of all of these bad things you may experience, these difficulties, hardships, these things. And in chapter 12, verse 3, it says, "Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart." So it's saying, whenever I'm going through these difficulties, when I'm going through some hardship, and I'm thinking, man, this sucks, I'm in such a bad position. Think about what Christ endured whenever he goes to the cross and gets crucified. Think about what he endured from the opposition, from sinners, from people just like us saying, you need to die, and he is a perfect sacrifice, right? He is getting this, he's enduring this. And he does that so that we will not grow weary and lose heart in what we're doing, which kind of comes back to that thing that I was saying earlier, where there's a certain foundation and level of certainty that you have as a true believer in Christ, and it's unmatched. You don't get that with Bitcoin. Bitcoin's a great tool, but it's not Christ.
I'm most certainly not rich, but I've definitely made more money every year that I've been an adult. And you can definitely say more money does not mean more happiness. It just kind of makes you more of who you are. And when it comes to Bitcoin, with really, in my opinion, like the type of time preference that you need in order to make it through multiple epochs, halvings for the layman, guys, make it through a halving. Okay. The further you go, if you just look at Bitcoin and you buy Bitcoin on a longer time frame, nobody's ever lost buying it. So you are going to attain more purchasing power. But that purchasing power, or the fact that your savings account is appreciated against goods and services and the dollar and things like that, doesn't mean ain't going to buy you a ticket to heaven, and it's not going to buy you happiness. So you still have to find things that you need to create and do in this world that make you happy, that serve others, that protect your family. So yeah, life is much bigger than money. I think it's just really interesting how people want to ignore the degradation of society around fiat, because it's so obvious if you take that lens. I mean, it's more for me. I think on a fiat standard, I think Nyc would be successful no matter what. I think we could use bananas as money, and Nyc would probably find a solution, and he'd probably figure it out. But I think so often when people are having these financial conversations online and they're not Bitcoiners, the people who are not Bitcoiners and they're the haters of it, part of me feels like they hate the average person a lot. Like a lot of me feels like people who have a lot in our society today, they look at those with less and go, oh, they're just lazy. Oh, they're just stupid. Oh, they're just this or they're just that. And I think that is a fairly large problem that we have in society today, where people don't realize how far the game has gone.
I think the same could be said with Bitcoin too, and I think that's something we've got to watch out for. The have fun staying poor mindset, I don't think it's great.
I mean, if you would like to speak about that, I mean, like I don't agree with the have fun staying poor thing, because I view Bitcoin as a savings tool, not an investment. I would be lying to people at this point if I was buying all this Bitcoin, right? If I was buying all this Bitcoin thinking, oh, this is just like an investment and I'm going to sell it at some point in time. It's literally just a savings account. The reason why you do not see somebody like myself getting involved with an equity or getting involved with a bond. Sorry, I laugh at that. It's funny to even think about. I don't buy government debt, guys. I'm not a trader. Okay, like it just is what it is. But anywho, I don't view it as an investment. I view it as a savings tool, because it literally is just a network that's going to continue to work and save your value, because one, it can't debase it. Two, it's really hard to change the protocol. It's going to continue to produce blocks every 10 minutes. Nobody controls it. Love that. And it has no jurisdiction. So if anything ever goes wrong, I can get wherever I need to go. Also, it's extremely liquid. I mean, for those that haven't noticed, like Bitcoin's price, when it goes down like this, it's like an over-the-counter trade. And even when exchanges get drained like they have and ETFs are buying all this Bitcoin, there are still other entities like GBDC who are selling off in a major way that is getting sucked up so fast that you're not seeing 70 to 55 this time. You're not seeing 70 to 50, because everybody's kind of waiting for another like 20 to 30% crash. And I was listening to Money Mahler's podcast, Nyc, so I guess maybe getting into a little bit of price predicting here towards the end of this show. But Jack Mahler's was kind of like, if Bitcoin just sat at 70 for another 3 months, it would kill both sides of the trade. And Bitcoin always does what you least expect it to do. So you can see it have, and you can see it fight up, and you see it fight down. But ultimately speaking, just the nature of it, there's still a lot more Bitcoin to accumulate and get distributed from really GBDC. I mean, and then maybe there's a couple other sell-offs if the government is dumb enough to do it, that you could see some sell-offs. But price action wise, it's going to go up and down. It's a new market. I mean, when you dump 15,000 coins, yeah, I mean, it might make the price go down just a little bit. If Michael Saylor sold all his Bitcoin tomorrow, the price would go down. But I'm willing to bet the price does not go to zero. And if it does not go to zero, it's not going down forever, because it is a finally scarce asset. I mean, there are no more Bitcoin. It can only go up. So,
Griff, think about it like this. It's almost like as we as Bitcoiners are not making a bet necessarily that, in investment terms, necessarily that the dollar value of our Bitcoin is going to increase, but that over time, we are going to price more and more goods and services through Bitcoin as an independent financial network, an independent monetary network. And I think when we do this in a way where we are taking money that we've earned, economic value that we've earned that we don't need right now, it's excess from what we need for now or in the midterm, and we put that in Bitcoin and we save it in Bitcoin, we're buying portions of Bitcoin. We're buying sats, right? And what we're doing is, although that dollar value of that Bitcoin may go up and down, when we continually save, when we dollar cost average into Bitcoin, we continually increase our Bitcoin balance in our wallet, right? It continually increases. And the bet I think that we're making as Bitcoiners is that money is a market, and there are logical, objective properties that make a monetary good the best monetary good. And if it's a market, let's also assume that the market is going to go toward, and let's also assume that this money for market is a winner take all, that all the economic value is going to trend to the most efficient monetary network in terms of, it's got to be optimized for a handful of different things, different conversation. Go listen to our episode with Eric Yakes. We talked all about it. When we're optimized, all the value is going to flow to that one system because it's easier to trade with more people in this one network. And if that market is going to be a winner take all market, Bitcoin happens to be the best option that is optimized for all of these properties of money that we want to optimize for. And so what I think the Bitcoin bet is for a true Bitcoiner hodler is that over time, I'm going to buy Bitcoin with the hopes and conviction that as time goes on, people are going to become more and more aware, as a market does. Ideally, there's a free market. We know that different jurisdictions are different. People have different lives. But I think overall, down the line, money will flow, economic value will flow to Bitcoin as a store of value, as potentially a medium of exchange. That's a topic of discussion. I think it could be with the Lightning Network and or something similar, but operating, in the sense of it's more efficient for regular transaction, and also will be used as a unit of account. And if that's true, man, we stand to benefit a lot in terms of being early adopters, or at least in the first wave of the majority, wherever we're at in that adoption curve. We won't know until way down the line probably, right? But, we do stand to gain a lot. And sure, we are thinking about storing our economic value in an amount of Bitcoin relative to the whole of 21 million Bitcoin. We can say that this amount that we hold, if we just keep it, it's going to be a static amount relative to the whole. And that's really good for maintaining economic value. It's really, really good for maintaining economic value. But also, this system is priced as if it's like this big, right? This system that operates, that we know is so valuable because of its ability to maintain purchasing power, because it's not been truly understood by the vast majorities of people, it's significantly undervalued, right? And that's where the asymmetric information, the proof of work, comes in when somebody says, "Oh, you're lucky because you found Bitcoin." Well, you found Bitcoin, and maybe there was some luck in that, but you did the work to understand that this independent monetary network, globally decentralized and distributed, permissionless, borderless, jurisdictionless. There is no one person controlling. There's no single point of failure. This thing is undervalued, and so I'm going to fucking buy it right now. And I'm going to do it as much as I can in a responsible manner that's different for everybody. You got to do your budgeting. It's important. It's important. You got to do it. So whatever is responsible for you, then if you're going to start buying Bitcoin and you've done the research into understanding why, and you can have a conversation with somebody and defend what your position is, and also feel convinced and convicted in what that is because you've read, because you've done the work, that's a different deal than just like, oh, I'm going to buy NVIDIA because it's going up. We're going to buy GameStop. Like what? Bitcoin is so different. It's completely different than anything else.
Well, so leave it off, Nick. Tell them your top 5 crypto picks of the next bull run, and what altcoin can these guys get involved in?
I've been doing a lot of research actually. Griff.
Dog hat coin. Do you think they should go buy the dog with hat coin? Or
no? I've got a top 3, but I'm not sure who I put 4 and 5. But I've been doing a lot of research into Bitcoin. That's obviously number 1, and then the halving is coming up for this other coin. It's called Bitcoin. That'd probably be my number 2. And 3, 4, and 5 are also Bitcoin, and we could talk about a handful of other different reasons. We've also got a lot of podcasts in the past, but I think these are some good thoughts today, Griff. This was a really good show. I enjoyed your logic line of questions. It was good. Flows.
No, I think it's almost like we're always rebranding the Nyc and Griff Show. We're always just on a new app, maybe. But I think if you're listening or you've been a listener, you've tuned in, because we do get some listeners. So, I mean, like, it's not like we get 0 listeners. So for the guys that are listening, it's been a fun journey with you. We're going to continue the journey probably forever because we love doing it. And honestly, these episodes get me charged up regardless. Just getting to talk on a Saturday morning for an hour with somebody who sometimes we share maybe too many common thoughts, which sometimes doesn't produce the most sparked conversation. I promise you, if you're in the car and we're talking about things other than the Bitcoin at work, it probably is a little bit more energetic at times. But we love sharing our opinions on Bitcoin, and we've loved sharing them all the way down. Now we've loved sharing them all the way up. And I think moving forward, you're going to see the price probably go up, and we will not change. We will still be here. So thanks for tuning in to the Nyc and Griff Show, episode 309. Peace.